Okay, so it's been quite interesting since we've had this webinar going. I think I've presented it to 3 or 4 different companies, and I presented it again this morning to a large telco, and it was a fascinating comment, Paul. I don't know if you remember how he opened it. He basically said that the business got together saying, we need to start paying attention to data monetization. And I really like that, and I think it is important, and love to hear your comments on this challenge that we're facing. And I'll just go to the next slide just to share a little bit what I mean. And this was on our LinkedIn post to say, if CDOs prioritize enhancing data quality, reliability, access, and all other fancy data management, the likelihood of the data analytics team being effective at providing value to the organization is reduced by 43%. Okay. And then another comment that I saw today was this one over here, which saying it's important for the CDO to mandate data office ROI before it is mandated. Okay. So I've put those 2 quotes there, and would love to hear what you think about them, especially the last one. The first one I tend to agree with, but maybe I'm a little bit biased, and I'm so far down the track that I'm not understanding the difference. But any comments from you, Paul? What's your view on it? What do you think of these quotes?
No, it's spot on, Howard. I think I was also on a call earlier with the opportunity for marketing our training products, and just mentioning the one product, CDO in a box, and just thinking about the lifespan. Those statistics that came out, I think it was Forbes that published them. I think it was Forbes now offhand, but what's the average life?
These ones over here.
Those are the ones. What's the average life of the CFOs? All these guys, and I have a suite for the one that gets it right, and I have an auction, and no one can get it right, and they all think that the CDO lives long. So they're quite shocked when I tell them. But anyway, just brought that up, and that's what it reminds me of. And I think it's just so relevant that on many levels that we're battling to get that value visible, at least in organizations. And so these techniques, I think, can prove to be just hugely valuable in itself to help data professionals just expose that value that they are bringing, and help them package it and all that.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. And I think you were talking to this comment here, which says it's important for the CDO to mandate the ROI before it is mandated or they leave.
Yes.
And typically it's mandated by the business to say, what value are you adding? And the next minute they are finding another job. So anybody else? Is there anybody else that feels differently, has similar experiences? Would like to comment on this? Okay. Are you in agreement? Does anyone disagree? Does that make sense to you in terms of basically saying that? And data quality is an interesting one, because I saw on the LinkedIn post last week, I think it had lots of different. I think there was so much engagement on it. I was a little bit puzzled, and the question was, do you do data quality first and then data governance, or data governance and then data quality? And I thought of saying, well, you do neither. You actually have to focus on getting your value, becoming value driven, and then you choose which one's appropriate. So anybody like to share? Gaston, fantastic. At least somebody. What's your thinking?
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, well, precisely today I have been like for my company in a data governance meeting as well, and I have some tidy feelings. Yes, at least me being a product owner and cooking data and at the same time working in data governance, like sometimes I'm dealing a lot with the chief data officer. Yes, that is something, let's say, quite new, at least in my company. Yes, that they have a really good knowledge of management. Yes.
Yes.
But the way that they have been addressed, like all the data governance topics, they have been mainly through um, uh, knowledge management knowledge.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and a lot of practical knowledge. Yes,
Yes.
so I think like sometimes like they try to move forward with data quality, for example, um, but in a really high conceptual way. Yes,
Right.
and in that process is like complicate to learn what is data quality, what is to give access when they have never been like on this process. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to disestimate now on here or be offensive.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Sure.
So that's that. More sometimes my impression that is related with this comment probably. Yes.
Right. Okay. And I think I may have shared some time back. You probably you weren't around on the meetings, Gaston, where um, um, Peter Jackson and Carolyn Carruthers. I wonder if you. I'm sure you know them. They talk about the CDO summer school. So if any of you are interested in becoming a CDO, I would really recommend you attend the CDO summer school. So if there's anybody who would like to, please attend that or shout out and I'll contact them and send your name. But what they do, which I like, is they actually have almost created these CDO generations. They call them CDO Gen 1, CDO Gen 2, and CDO Gen 3. And CDO Gen 1 is when you walk into an organization and they are really battling to get the fundamentals of data management going. So that's almost what Scott Taylor refers to as, they're battling to get the truth and the truth, and then they go and then they try to jump into analytics. Now, what he's saying with a lot of these comments is, depending on your skills, if you have lots of technical skills like Mark and myself and Paul, we become that typical CDO Gen 1 that will help the organization establish the data management fundamentals. And then you'll sort of hand that baton over to a CDO Gen 2 that's more focused on analytics and more your revenue generation or offensive or use cases. Okay, so these are some of the things that we are facing if you choose your company wrong. Okay, so if you're like a specialist in marketing or finance and you've done a lot of analytics and then you go into an organization that's battling with the fundamentals, you're going to have some challenges to relate to how to fix the problems, how to get that basic data engineering right. And so you need to be careful. We all need to be careful when we choose, and also vice versa. If someone who's been doing ETL, data movement, data engineering, metadata, all those things, jumps into a company that really requires in-depth analytics, you may find yourself out of play to an extent, and a little bit nerve-wracking in that situation. All right, so that to me is what's important here. And if I go to the next level, that's exactly what Paul was referring to. Can you see how the CDO tenure, that this was done by Korn Ferry, Paul, and that tenure is 2.4 years, whereas the CDO is 6.9 years. Okay, so that's sure, that's we're basically saying that the CDO is at 34% of the tenure of the CEO. And now what happened was, when this went into LinkedIn, people automatically jumped on the fact that it is because they are not delivering value and they're not providing the right direction. That was basically what people felt was the root cause of this lack of tenure. Okay, and then everything came out with the first 100 days on the CDO journey. What do they need to do? And those are the type of things that Peter Jackson and Carolyn Carruthers deal with on the CDO summer school. In terms of how do you make a difference as you come in? First of all, how do you choose the right organization? How do you make a difference? And then how do you continue to progress after that? Now, I'm not 100% sure of that root cause. I do feel that due to the fact that it's a new post that not many people understand what it's supposed to do, you probably find that the people that go after CDOs, and that's why we've developed this thing called CDO in a box, basically means that you may want to have somebody that is not part of the organization, that is not full-time, initiate the CDO position so that everybody gets an understanding before you go out and you go hire a big CDO that costs lots of money. You sort of want to get an understanding for the organization. Okay. Now, I think there's probably two people, there are two parts to that. Yes, the CHRO is the Human Resources Officer. Charles, does that make sense? Okay. All right, so that's where we are now. It's up to us. I feel that it's not just the CDO's fault. It's those people that are part of running the data management office. It's up to that. It's up to us to change the way we do work. Now, I was very pleasantly surprised when I had to go over to a BizBoc, or the Business Architecture Forum. I've joined the Business Architecture Forum. I love that and understanding how they operate, and everything they're doing is value driven. And I thought, wow, has this value driven become a cliche? But I suppose at the end of the day, we all want to make sure that whatever we're doing is delivering business value. Okay, and we can demonstrate that we're delivering business value. Now, the business architecture, they're slightly different because they have to focus on the business value proposition, the business goals, the business objectives, and the business strategy. So one can understand where they're at. But I really like that view that they're expressing of how do we operate and how do we become value driven. Okay. Please, if you have any comments or anything like that. So this is the, basically we say that either it's valueless, not worth any money, or it's not important, or it's not helping me, or it's directionless in terms of not knowing what to do. And there you see us maybe chasing after all the data management side of it. And so what I found a lot of times is we build what's called a data management strategy instead of a data strategy. And we jump very quickly into technology and we're not listening and addressing the business problem. So please be careful of keeping that separation between the data strategy that's there to deliver against business goals and the data management strategy, which is really what we refer to as our data office ROI. Are we getting better at data management? So good to understand that. So for the sake of your CDO and the tenure that and your data management program and your data career, you must show value and get direction. I shared a rather embarrassing story this morning at one of these presentations where I was asked to come in and establish a data management program for a central bank, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed getting it going. And one of the things I was pushing at that point in time was making sure we focused on what I like to call our knowledge management. So it's policies, procedures, and reference architecture. Okay, so do we know what we need to do? Do we know how we need to do it, and are we doing it in the right way? Are we doing the right things in the right way? And we spent 6 months putting a lot of effort into doing this. I thought it was a great piece of work, but what I had missed was just that the business's perception of what we were doing was giving them no value, and it wasn't worth any money. Now, unfortunately for me, my billing had reached the CEO of the organization, and he met me one day at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. We were working long hours, and he said to me, "Howard, shucks, I've noticed that you've been spending a lot of hours working on this. You guys are working really hard." And I said, "Yeah. We're trying to get this stuff done." And he said, "But what benefit are we getting out of it?" Now, that's something that I hadn't thought of at that point in time, and I know that I mumbled something silly or whatever it was. I could see that he had switched off. By the time we got to the bottom, he left the elevator. He didn't really even say goodbye. And unfortunately, it was 3 months, not 3 months, but 3 weeks later, and an audit was put in by internal audit on our data management program. And I think it wasn't a week or two afterwards where they stopped the program and reshaped it. Now, I don't know why. I don't know why I was so lucky or why I was so fortunate, because I could have been like one of the CDOs, but I was asked to reinstantiate it and rework the office. Okay. I really couldn't explain the value. Now, I don't know about you. Is there any of you out there that can, if you were asked this question of, tell me, what is the value of the work that you're doing to the business? Now, I think the people that are the closest to that would probably be the data quality people, given that they've done a cost impact analysis of the challenges that they're doing and their ability to deal with it. And then that business case of being able to say, I'm earning more money in fixing the problems than we're spending on the data quality team. So those guys do tend to look at it. But any of you faced with this challenge, had to answer those type of questions, and hopefully not many of you failed like me. Okay. Paul, anything from your side?
Just, I wonder if it's interesting silence, but I appreciate the story, Howard, and just obviously I reflect on that when dealing with clients as well. So the customers that we talk to and all that. So, but
Okay.
yeah,
Thanks.
luckily
Thanks
haven't been asked myself. I just remember getting chirped by somebody at a bank in 2013. You'll know which one it was.
Yeah.
All they said was, "You consultants just come here, you spend time, you earn lots of money, and you leave us with all the problems." I was like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
is that the perception? So,
Right. Mark,
anyway.
what's your impression? I know you quite.
Well,
Hopefully, I'm not putting you on the spot.
no, not at all. I vibrated to Paul's comment there, because I've been accused exactly of the same thing. Like, you consultants who come in, ask us all these questions. Well, if you'd start treating your data right, you wouldn't need consultants to come in and tell you how to fix your data.
Right.
And the project I have right now with a client is doing an integration layer between two proper line of business commercial applications that are neither of which are completely properly populated.
Right.
So that's a data quality issue in that they're both of these line of business apps are missing attributes. So the business smarty pants guy built a SQL server in the middle that combines data from both so they can do reporting. Super, solves this problem. He gets hit by a bus or wins a lottery. Everybody depending on downstream power, like 17 Power BI reports out of that thing, they're hooped.
Wow.
Because there's no one else in the. So I've been engaged to productize his thing.
Right.
And yeah, so the reason I attended this one is this value statement, because I've had the feedback from, again, my business users. Oh, unless it saves us $1 million, the analytics team doesn't want to work on it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
business has lots of needs. The business has lots of ideas. The business has lots of reports / dashboards that would be valuable, but it seems that the enterprise analytics team has got such a high bar.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
they get turned away. So they do it themselves, right? That's why you may have seen my comment on LinkedIn here about a month ago. A guy named Louis Gillespie was commenting about the hidden data factory per Tom Redmond.
Yes.
This is not a hidden data factory. This is an out in the open. Everybody knows about it data factory, and it's there because two other departments aren't doing their jobs properly, and they don't report up to the same. They report to different VPs. So unless I can get in front of the CEO to tell these two SVPs, to tell their two VPs, to tell their two GMs, to tell their two directors, to tell their two people to get their data in shape, it continues. So I don't mind taking their money. Pay. You guys are dumb, so you got to pay me.
Yeah.
I don't say that, right? I'm very polite and yes, sir, and very grateful. I'm very grateful to have this contract, but the only reason I'm there is because they're not using their line of business systems properly. They're not being good stewards.
Right. Fantastic.
So, keeps me in business.
I think Charles also described it in a similar way. He says, the way I've explained it was like a plumber. No one really cares until the pipe leaks. I'm here to fix the pipes before they leak or break or whatever it is that the state of the pipes. Now, unfortunately, as you know, these consultant payments are always grudge payments. They're not happy payments. So I always and that's something that I'm getting into more and more now, as a case of saying, well, when we take on an initiative, how do we do a commercial feasibility study with the appropriate technical feasibility and then allow us to build a prioritization matrix? Okay, and then Gaston has just said, he attempted here to ask how value should be measured. And I think that's the important question. And I think that's what I'm trying to do for this 4 weeks, is show you how. How do we measure it? What are the templates out there? What are the frameworks? And how would we measure a data initiative? Now, what I'm also saying is, please, this data initiative is not just for, oh, I'm going to build a BI report or a data product. It's about anything to, I'm going to run a data literacy program to teach people how to read data. Okay, so it goes from a very sort of, we're talking all intangible assets. So I don't want to go say from tangible to intangible, because all of our data is intangible assets, but it goes from very intangible to not so intangible, where you can recognize what you're getting. So how do we do that? How do we see that we've got the value? Now, I really liked Tom Redmond's approach, in that he's got that 1 in 10. I don't know if you have seen that. And what he does do is he basically says that it takes you $1 to process a correct transaction. It takes you $10 to process an incorrect transaction. Now, what I feel is missing there is okay, so, well, okay, how much does it take us to fix it? That's if you do nothing. That's the do nothing part. So you hopefully you're getting to 1 in 5 in 10. So it takes you $1 for good records. It takes you $5 to fix it, and it takes you $10 to work with dirty data. And if he says, okay, if our data set was to make things simple, if it was 100 records and we had something like a 50% failure in terms of our data quality, the real cost of working with that data set is $50 plus 50 times 10, which is 500. So it's $550 to work with that data set. Okay, so what I'm suggesting, we have ways of quantifying it that are based on rules of thumb that have important credibility, that Gartner have come up with it, and they talk about the cost of hidden data factories that Mark was talking about. They talk about the cost of processing dirty data. These are the things that that we need to pay attention to. But it's got to come down to a financial metric, a financial measure that you can relate to it. Now, when you do these financial measures, we've got to be careful of not being like some of these business cases that have all this amazing ROI. It never gets anywhere near the ROI. And the CFOs look at these ROI statements and they say, yes, I've heard that one before. I don't know where you get your data from, but that's what you're saying. It's going to benefit me as an organization. So part of doing data value realization is working with the accountant and the CFO and getting them to agree on how to account for that intangible asset. How do I account for data literacy, data education? How do I account for regulation? How do I account for data quality, data products, risk mitigation, all of these things? That's sort of where you need to start. So Gaston, to basically answer your question, you have to have a framework to do the measurement. And the first step within the framework is your value taxonomy. How do I allocate the work that I'm doing to value? Now, if any of you, how many of you have read Infonomics by Doug Laney and Data Juice? Now, who remembers he uses commercial feasibility, so he actually gets into financial metrics, but he uses a very nice visualization to explain to the business what they're doing, what benefit they're getting out of it. Who remembers that? Who remembers that technique that he uses? It's actually referred to as a data compass. He uses a data compass, and I'm going to give you some examples of it now. Okay. All right. Now, in the data compass, what he does do is, and let me show you what this data compass looks like. So here is, this is all part of the slide deck that I said I'd release to you. And basically what I do is I do case studies per industry. So when I go, Mark, when I go to telco or oil and gas, you better go in there with use cases that they can relate to. Please don't go in there with a cloud use case in terms of AWS or Amazon. They would just say, yeah, but it's those guys, they make money and we don't make money like that. So make sure you've got the right use cases. Okay, so this is what I'm referring to. Can you guys see this compass, this value compass? Okay, all right. Now, that's what we are referring to in a way, also as a value taxonomy. Mine gets more complicated, and I use what's called the Deloitte Enterprise Shareholder Value Map to actually show you where the value is coming from. And when you look at a use case, you tell the business people where they are going to get value. Okay. So let me give you an example. This was an example that I used in today's presentation. I used the telco industry. Now, can you see here, there's just been a report by PwC, and what's happening to them is that their consumer market revenues continue to drop and have been dropping for quite some time. And the only thing that's actually increasing here is, you can see this is mobile broadband. That's the only one that's getting bigger over time, whereas the others are reducing over time. And the threats that they are facing are from Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. And there we go. Okay, so telecom stocks lower on report that Amazon is to offer mobile services to Prime members. Okay, so this must make the telcos a little bit nervous of, shucks, now someone's eating our breakfast. Okay, eating the cheese. All right. And then we have Facebook, huge plan to shake up the dull world of telecoms. Okay, so we must understand there are threats out there, and these are the types of threats that they're facing. Price wars, eSIM threats. Has anyone read about an eSIM? Anyone know what an eSIM is? That's the latest technology that they've come out. And basically an eSIM is basically a virtual electronic SIM that allows you to jump across multiple providers. Okay, so you don't need a Vodacom SIM and a MTN SIM and a Telco ABC SIM. It just works on all of them. And that is fantastic. Now you're getting this generic SIM and people can jump around. All right, there you go. You got it. Fantastic. Are you using it?
This was my first eSIM experience. It worked good. I got it at London Heathrow last vacation.
Okay.
The downside was 3 times during that 2 weeks, my phone somehow managed to ping my home provider, so I got roaming charges anyway.
Oh, right.
But
okay.
better than roaming every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Somehow, again, I'm new to this. I'm used to the physical SIM, like take out my Calgary SIM, put in a UK SIM. So this is very cool, but it's not perfect. So, but yes, it's
a whole
very
lot
cool.
better than. Can you see what's at the back of my phone?
Oh
These
yes,
are all
your
the
little
SIM
SIM
cards.
puller. Yeah, yeah,
It's all
yeah.
my SIM cards that when I go to different countries, I pull out the
Yeah.
SIM card and I'm.
I used to have a SIM card wallet back in 2000, so I feel you,
Wow.
Howard. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you're doing these use case studies, you need something like this that you can actually present to the users when you're doing your use case ideation, and you're going to present that compass in terms of where you're operating. But what is important that before you start with this use case ideation, you need to understand the KPIs that measure the business, that measure the telco industry. And these are the ones that I've got. And when you get the deck, you'll actually see there's a description of every single one of them. But as you can see, something like churn tracking, that's when do we leave this telco and go to another telco, and what does it cost to bring on a new subscriber? So these two are related. When I look at churn, I'm basically looking at customer lifetime value. And what it's saying there is that it actually costs more to bring on new subscribers than it is to look after existing subscribers. Okay. So please, when you go in here, and this is what I refer to as business literacy, not financial literacy. I refer to this as business literacy. How is the business being measured? And you go in and you now start talking. And what I like to do, certainly before any of my strategies and everything like that, you want to build awareness. What could you and can you and should you be doing to deal with some of the external opportunities and threats that you've got there? How do we handle it? Okay, so here are just an example of, I've done the value compass for you. This is for Vodafone, and their first engagement was to look at service enhancement with respect to customer experience. So that's on the experience and retention scenario. And basically they want to, their ROI is based on high satisfaction scores, reduced churn, and optimized network resources. Now, what's the benefit of focusing on these business KPIs? Could anyone tell me? Paul, I'd love to know. Could you tell me why does it make my life easier if I focus on those scores? I think Paul. Yes, Paul, are you still there?
So taking a stab. So it's if you're focusing on those scores, because you've developed that taxonomy and those targets, you've aligned it to your business model or your capabilities, and you can start to prove the data management capability is actually successful or not successful for that, according to that metric, aligned to your strategy, your business strategy. So you ensuring alignment at all times.
Right.
When I say ensuring alignment, you're watching the alignment.
Yeah. Now, you're right. Now, the other benefit that you got is the business are watching these metrics, and the business understand what happens when the churn increases. They can quantify to you what is the cost of a churn increase. Okay, so I spent time with JG. He did on the health thing. You'll see something like that, and they had a rating of their churn or their customer lifetime value was 3.4 years. Okay, so what they said is that if you could increase my customer lifetime value from 3.4 to 4.5, this is the business revenue that we get from their contracts. Now, the CFOs and the business people know how to calculate that. Okay, so what you contribute, and this is what they refer to as indirect costs, if you can show that you've reduced the churn with the data and the analytics, that benefit is then allocated to you. So you're now talking business language, and business people can reason and discuss and debate and see the benefit that you're getting. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah, very good. Sure.
Okay, so if I know these KPIs and the business are watching them and the business understand and they've got trends, when I make a difference from a data management point of view, a lot of the times my initiative can say, I'm working on that thing. That's what I'm expecting to get the benefit out of it. Okay, arguments are less, not so many debates, and they can see the value. Okay, now the problem JG got into, and I'm using JG's name, was that he negotiated the first year benefit, but he didn't negotiate the ongoing benefit. So when it got to the end of the first year, they actually paid him and they allocated that money to his CDO department, but then they wouldn't allocate it to him on the second year. Now, he's bad. He hadn't really negotiated all of these different taxonomies and how do you treat them and the accounting treatment and how do you amortize it. So there's quite a bit that needs to be done to ensure that you sustain the value that you are delivering and getting. Okay, so there's Vodafone, and there you can see the points. There's AT&T, customer churn, customer lifetime value. Okay, then we had Deutsche Telekom, which are risk mitigation and network analyze network traffic. Okay, they were dealing with minimized reputational risks. So you can see there's risk and reputation, and it's nice and visual when you're building the use cases. You've got two nice things about building these data use cases. One is any improvement in the data with respect to that KPI can be attributed to the value that you're getting from the business, and there's less argument. I just want to, is everyone comfortable with this approach of making use of a value compass? Gaston, is that answering some of your questions?
Yes, definitely. Yes. I think we are learning more things.
Okay. Now, please, this is what you must remember is this is what I'm referring to here is very much indirect costs. Okay, so this is not building a data product that you sell that you get revenue for. So I'm going to come back to that in terms of classifying it between data indirect costs and direct costing. Okay. So this is basically saying I'm having an impact on the business revenue, on the business product. It's not I am selling my data and getting direct revenue off that. It's a different valuation technique. Okay.
Sorry,
all right.
Just
yes, Paul.
Maybe a question or a comment. Would you agree with that the ability that your quick wins are actually your indirect, if you understand this well, because the data is already there, the process is already there, the problem is already there. You don't have to sell that thing. You don't have to sell that new idea. You're not selling a problem because it's already there. And if you're solving it, it's a quicker win than a still potential revenue is great, but it still has to be sold. It still has to be, that effort of selling. Once you have the product, you still have to go out and effort and sell it. With this, you could actually turn up the gas quite quickly. Nice.
You're right, Paul. So certainly, because you have existing systems and you're not building brand new and you're not recreating a product, this does tend to happen more in your quick win type of scenarios, unless you've got major business opposition to satisfaction scores. But this, you're right, this is the area that it fits into. And I'm sure Gaston can relate to the development of data products and getting all the revenue in. Paul, if you remember, we actually asked the business people, what value do you think this data product is to your customers? And they said, shucks, we've got to go and think about it, and we've got to do surveys and stuff like that. So getting the commercial feasibility of that revenue model was not easy. Gaston, I'm sure you may be finding this in terms of being a product owner. Are these the challenges that you face as well?
Yes, definitely. And also like taking what Paul was saying, like there are like things like in front of a data delivery teams, you don't even ask for because they are already that like the operational teams and other like teams that they already come with this problem. So you immediately know there are like quick wins at least. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
So,
Charles, I hope that sort of answers your questions as well. So your question was, if you help prevent a problem so it never occurs, how do you show value? The important thing to this is what I like to do, and what Paul and I did was we spent 2 weeks going through 6 departments, 2 days a department, and we say, tell me what your challenges are. Explain to me where you're battling, what you'd like to do, and stuff like that. And then, so here was the one that we got, the simplest one was, or someone said to me, Howard, please help me here. I've hired, or I haven't hired, but I'm using 5 of my business people to share data for 5 days every month. And I asked him, why are you sharing data? Isn't IT responsible for that? No. We've managed to collect the data from different agencies. We collect the data and we share it with everybody. They don't have a data engineering platform. They use Excel. They they use all sorts of email distribution stuff, and that's what they were doing. Now, what we did was we said, okay, let's build the costings. So we have 5 people operating at this amount of money for 5 days. What is the impact? Also, the impact on lost revenue that they could do, and that's how we quantified the value. Charles, I'm not sure, does that answer your question? Happy, fantastic. Okay, so this is if there's anything that I'm would like to achieve by the end of this thing is to show you that it's not all about building fancy revenue generation products, big data stuff. And Paul and Mark, that was a comment that I wanted to share with you, is big data is seen, these enterprise analytics, they are seen as the people that make money for the organization. They've got this perception that they're delivering money and they're focusing on business problems, business insights, and things like that. Is that I think you made a comment of they don't get involved unless it's a certain value or something.
A million, unless the business stakeholder, they want an ROI statement, and unless the business stakeholder is willing to say, I can save $1 million if you build me this dashboard, they don't engage.
Right.
And that's fine. I mean, you know, the average price of someone in that team is probably 100, you know, what's a data engineer, a Databricks data engineer, and a data scientist make $150, right?
Yeah.
So you know, plus benefits. So call them, they're probably 200K
right.
FTE costs,
right?
But now they want 5X. I would think if you could get 2X or 3X out of your, I don't know.
That's good.
It's an oil company. Anyway, I don't know if anybody does this well. I don't know. Like other than the digital natives, you know, like the Googles and Facebooks and so on. These, you know, it's sort of do the minimum. I don't know. I don't get it. And that's actually why I attended today. I was hoping for some sound bites that I could use with my leadership. So I could drop some pithy Howardisms on them and say, oh, if you just did this, you'd get this value. So
yeah. Okay. So what you will find is there's some nice case studies that we that we'll share with you. And one of the things that we had was a case study of the national highways in the UK, Mark, that actually, when they looked at the cost of their software licenses, it was more valuable than the cost of data. So that was the starting point. They were paying more in software licenses and treating it as an intangible asset and getting more value out of those intangible assets than they were getting out of data. And what you'll see in this one case study that we have, they actually changed it around where they could show the translation or the lineage between a data product, a product that they were providing to their customers, and that would be anything, for example, like traffic flow on the M1 in the UK. Now, if you could just tell the people not to get on the M1 at the right time, or where the things will get on and off and things like that, using that type of thing, that's what he engaged in, a whole digital transformation and showing the data's impact on every single one of those features that they provided the customer. And there's value that you can see there in terms of how much they attributed to the value of their assets within national highways. So that's a government industry that they were talking about. Okay. All right. So there are the different ones. Now we have, for example, Vodafone, and these are the people that the telco, and they went on to a Vodafone analytics platform, and here we see them offering users location-based insights and fleet management systems. Okay, so it's interesting how these telcos are now providing all sorts of other business people with value that are not their customers and not their subscribers. Okay, so here's basically the compass that we've got with differentiation and agility. And the nice thing that we like to refer to this use case is this is what we call a new business capability. So now all of a sudden, a telco is dealing with fleet management systems. They never dealt with fleet management systems before in their life. Now they're busy doing it. And I was actually involved in a trucking company, and they called it C-Track, and the telcos got connected with them in delivering a GSM-related fleet management system. Okay, so that was quite interesting. And here we can see the value compass says we're now differentiating. We're not part of a telco anymore. We've created this agility, and the use case category that we're operating with is in new business capability. And of course, there's revenue generation within the indirect one, is revenue generation that they're getting out of this scenario. Deutsche Telekom, look at the products that they have developed. Soccer analytics, smart parking, traffic management, and smart fleet management. This is what they are doing in terms of their big data products. Okay, so once again, you're seeing that, sure, they are doing all sorts of stuff that has got nothing to do with telcos, but it's operating on their platform. All of that location-based data, where they're operating at and what they're getting, they are now able to offer a similar type of thing with new capabilities and revenue generation from this. And what's interesting is it's vendors, data management vendors, people like us who come up with an idea for data, and we need to find a reliable partner in the telecom domain. Right? We need to find someone whose chips we're going to use that will give us the IoT that we need to get the information to do traffic management, smart fleet, and things like that. Okay, so there's Telkom, Deutsche Telekom, and they actually had that partnership with AT&T. They built a partnership there. Now, what I wanted to show you here was quite a nice thing that I got from Bill Scamoso in terms of internal use cases. Okay, so these are use cases that they could find that do not generate any revenue, direct revenue, they generate indirect revenue. And here we can see across all of the different business areas, from marketing, customer service, product enabling, networking, these are the use cases. Okay, now for each use case, depending on where it's on the compass, you have to find a way of explaining and expressing the benefit that you get from this data product. That's going to help with things like real-time media performance tracking, okay, or contact center productivity. Okay, so these are internal use cases. What data do we need to use to fix the problem? What is the benefit that we get back from the business, and what percentage of that benefit gets allocated to us? Okay, and that's what you're wanting to do, is you're wanting to agree with the business almost before you bring this initiative in to be part of your data strategy, you want to be able to say, do we agree on the value statements that we're getting from these different initiatives that we're doing? Okay. But of course, what's helpful is to say, okay, what projects are you busy with? Where are your challenges with respect to scheduling or with respect to data, and how can I contribute in that way? So you have to hold a lot of what we call ideation sessions to find the friction, to find the problems, to find the opportunities, and then see, well, what data could we use to support it? Now, I want to pause there for today, and I just want to share this really nice insight that I got from Dr. Lauren Pratt. And she said this comment to me as, please don't look for perfect data sets. Okay. Please be aware of currently they're making their decisions based on gut feeling, and they probably have no data. So any little bit of data is of benefit to them. Okay, you may not be perfect. You may not have everything that's there. You may not have all the features, but if you can just get some understanding of what's going on with the data that you're getting, buying, collecting, whatever it is, there's already an improvement on the database decision insights that you're getting, and then the decision making that you're receiving. All right, and that sort of brings me back to the end of those different studies. Okay, now we'll take you through all the other different studies at point in time, but I'm hoping I was able to show you how to think about it as a data citizen, how you're going to communicate with the business, listen to what their challenges are, and how you can improve it. Any questions, comments?
I only wish you were talking about oil companies there, Howard.
What I'll do.
I did time in telco years ago, so I get it.
Yeah.
But
what's quite interesting is I'll go through that Data Juice book for you as well and see if there's anything. And I really enjoy looking on the internet as to where the data value has been registered or what the case studies are. And I'll have one for you next week, Mark. I'll have a few for you just to show you what the oil companies are doing, or what some of the oil companies are doing in this regard.
Well, it's interesting because this morning I got one from Mark. I got an email because I was subscribed to his newsletter from Martin Eccleston. I'm just going to look him up
yes,
right
yes,
now.
the BI, the BI guy.
Yeah, Martin Ectors. Sorry, it's a data-only network. Stupid. I'll forward this to you because it's all about telco, OSS, BSS, 5G networks.
Right.
Blah,
Right.
blah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's like, yeah, forward.
What I'll do is I'll try to find an oil one for you, and I'll try to put it on the value compass, and then also the types of use cases, and then we can start talking about how would you build a valuation model for that data, or a commercial feasibility definition.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm struggling with is I've been engaged to productize this SQL Server integration platform that the business has built so that IT can maintain it, when the information architect in me feels like I should go and visit those two VPs and get them to clean up their data in their line of business. That might get me released from my contract as opposed to valued as an advisor to C-level, right? Like,
right. What I like to do, and remember the days before COVID where there were lots of times to meet people in the pub and stuff like that, and it's those sort of choice of just bump into people where you can start talking to them and probably get a better understanding of what are the challenges, why did they do this, what made them agree on it, what are they seeing it, how do they perceive it, and it's a really nice, really just what they call business empathy. What is your business empathy and understanding of their challenges that they are facing, and why did they do something? It was created for a reason. probably a good reason at that point in time, but does it still hold, and can it be challenged, and do they feel that it should be challenged? So those are the things that now Carolyn Carruthers calls it coffee and cake. And she actually suggests when you become a CDO, one of the things to do is to actually go and have a cup of coffee with them, and maybe sit in the coffee shop and have some slice of cake with him and just listen to their challenges. Now, Mark, you could dress that up in terms of saying, I've got my task is to re-engineer this, and I'd like to just understand and make sure we don't break anything and make sure we may be able to add something that you need. Those are the types of questions that you can be asking. I know it's sensitive as a consultant, but it's nice to get that level of engagement with them.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it to my general manager, the guy who engaged me.
Yeah.
I said that, you know, the reason that this thing exists is because these other two things aren't being fully populated. If you'd still need, that's not quite a true statement, because you'd still need a little bit of an integration in that. Yeah, it's too complicated to explain in this forum, but right. Again, the business, the smart people in the business, reservoir engineer, right? So these are engineers, and they can program, and then they learn Python, and then you give them a SQL server, and you got trouble. You don't. He's and when I go and say, well, you shouldn't be doing that, you couldn't be doing that, you got to come over to our way of doing things. He says, you know, why? Like, I got to be very careful that I don't come across as critical of the smart guy in the business.
This is someone who's not on mute. So just muting them now.
Okay.
That's Mayela and Charles. So Mark, I don't know if you see here in the chat, Charles is saying that in the oil and gas industry, at least in North America, it's a standard called PPDM that really helps to find common terms and ways to measure value. So I'll definitely take a look at that. Charles, I wonder if you, and then Mayela has also said, PPDM is widely used within oil and gas. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've also been there. Now, do you have a value measurement in there? Are you aware of that?
No, and it's not a question of the value that this platform is delivering. It was built in the business, and it's maintained and sustained by one fellow.
Yes.
So there's risk. Management identifies risk associated with depending on something.
Right.
Key
man,
like I said, the guy wins the lottery and leaves the building.
Yeah. Now, Mark, I can share a story that I had. I was called in to a financial markets company, and they had a person. They were actually automating a whole lot of stuff in Excel, and there was a very clever financial analyst who had done it all. She had a doctorate in financial markets, and then she retired, and the ruling was that she could not be re-employed. So internal audit got to hear about it. They raised an internal audit risk, and then they came down to us to say, what is the size of this risk, and how you're going to deal with it? And I had to go and assess that risk, and then basically say, okay, for me to mitigate the risk, and this is what you would do, Mark, is you're going to take the risk from this level to this level. What is the benefit of that in terms of that you're talking about? Now, that's how you would go about your situation.
Yeah, no, that risk is bad. That's why I've got a contract.
Yeah.
That phase of it, right? The VP has, that VP went and talked to my VP and said, we got to do something about this. So they, my GM has put me on this project to productize, to monitor. I mentioned Python and SQL Server. It's just the next generation of Excel macros, right?
Yeah.
It's the same exact problem where you've got a bunch of logic embedded in a sheet, and that person retires, and that's good. Again, it's funding my operation over here. So
what I'm trying to say, Mark, is that it would be very helpful for you to be able to quantify the
Yes.
value of the risk. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
That
no, true,
then
true.
you can then offset that against your costs. That's what you're trying to win here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, true that. True.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks, everybody else. Any further questions before we close? And hopefully I will go through the PPDM this week and make sure I include it as one of the value frameworks. I did want to share with you that these are some of the value frameworks that we'll be talking about. These are the data valuation frameworks. So it's everything from EDM Council to the ones that we've built, Doug Laney, Gartner's EBE. Then we've got Bill Scamoza's Think Like a Data Scientist, Edge of Chaos. Then there's APQC. Then there's Deloitte Framework. And then there's another one which you call, this is Nicholas I can't pronounce his surname, Yoi. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of how do you practically implement a data valuation framework in your organization that helps you become data value driven and helps you focus on the value and express the value of all the work that you're doing. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Howard.
Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Thanks a
Goodbye.
lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, Mark.
All right,
Cheers.
take care. Yeah, have a good evening over there. See you next week.
Very much. Cheers. Bye.